Hello, and welcome to another episode of Mentor Text Moment. I'm Kirsten Larson, and today's book will be Lily Williams' If Polar Bears Disappeared. So today we're going to talk about what Lily Williams' purpose was in writing this book, how her choices like voice, text structure, and point of view help her accomplish her purpose, and then I'll have a handout that you can use with your students so they can write their own If an Animal Disappeared book. So first of all, in my point of view, I think Lily Williams' book is a persuasive book. She is trying to persuade readers about the devastating effects of climate change on polar bears and their habitat. So let's look at some of the choices that Lily has chosen to persuade readers. So what kind of structure did she choose for the book? I like to use Melissa Stewart's text structures that she's defined, and I've given you the link at the bottom of the slide if you want to learn more about some of these different nonfiction text structures. So in this particular book, Lily has used the cause and effect structure, and I'm going to give you an example. So once she provides a little opening about the Arctic, which is the polar bear's habitat, she starts talking about what would happen if the polar bear's habitat changed. So the key phrase here is if too much sea ice melted. So cause and effect structures, a lot of times there's an if-then type of setup. So what you'll find is that Lily says, if too much of the sea ice melted, and then she gives us an example of one of the effects. And so she has this on the different page. So then you'll see the same wording on the next page. If too much sea ice melted, then she gives us another example. So Lily has chosen a cause and effect structure as her overall format for the book. Then let's talk about the type of voice that she uses. So authors can use a lot of different types of voice in nonfiction. Sometimes they're playful, sometimes they're lyrical, which is a poetic type of voice. Sometimes they're humorous. They can be informal. There's a long list of voices that authors can establish. And in this particular book, I believe that Lily has used a very authoritative, descriptive voice. She is using a lot of words that students may not be familiar with, but they are defined in context. And so she's really keeping it fairly formal, descriptive, and I would say authoritative. Finally, let's talk about the point of view that Lily uses. So different point of views that authors could choose. They could choose first person, which is when I write about I or me. You can also use we. Second person is when I write you. And third person is he, she, it. So let's look. This is something kind of unique about this particular book. So most of the book is written in third person. She says, this is the Arctic. It's an ecosystem in the far northern region of the globe. Few animals call this land home. The ones that do live here are strong, tough, slow, and sometimes hard to see. So for most of the book, she's writing in third person. But then there's a really interesting moment towards the end of the book when she starts to sort of drive the point home that humans are responsible for climate change. And she switches point of view in a really dramatic spread. So she talks about the cycle of ice thawing continuing. This chain of events will roll onward, affecting all these different habitats over time until, okay, so this is the previous spread, right? Until, and then she says, we are no longer able to stop it. So at that point, she shifts point of view into a first person point of view, and she brings the reader in so that the reader starts to bear or feel some of the responsibility for climate change. So it's really interesting that she's used 2 points of view in this particular book, which is more unusual for a picture book. So the big question to discuss with your students, once they've figured out the choices that Lily has made, is do these choices work? So if her goal is to persuade us about the devastating effects of climate change and our role in it, how does the cause and effect structure help that happen? How does her authoritative, descriptive voice help reinforce her points? And how does her choice to use a third person point of view until that pivotal moment when she switches into first person, how does that add to the persuasive power of her book? So once you've done that with your students, I've prepared a handout, which is a Word document. I will put the link in the notes to this video. And you can work with your students to pick an endangered animal, do a little bit of research about that animal and its habitat, and then think about what would happen if that animal's habitat disappeared. How would it affect the animal, its predators, its prey, and other systems throughout the world? So that's today's Mentor Text Moment. I wish you happy writing, and I'll see you next time.